Hi, thanks for taking time to join us today. My name is Keith Harris. I'm your host for today's webinar from Milestone Systems. Today, we're discussing intelligent video analytics and how you can use them to solve problems, achieve business goals, and help your team become more efficient. We want to show you how you can use video analytics for fast investigations, better security, and gaining better insights into your business. We're diving into intelligent video analytics, what it means, how it works, and why it matters. Whether you're in retail, public safety, critical infrastructure, education, or another sector, video analytics can help you solve problems, reach goals, and work more efficiently. We'll show you how advanced video analytics turn video from passive footage into active intelligence. That means faster investigations, stronger security, clearer insights for your business. You'll hear about the latest technologies, real-world use cases, and deployment options. We'll also talk about how to adopt analytics responsibly and how to get the most out of your investment. Our panel of experts is here to share their experiences and perspectives and help answer your questions. By the end of the webcast, you'll have a clear view of how intelligent video analytics can help your organization see more, act faster, and work smarter. Let's get started. We have three great speakers lined up for you today. Egal de Veer is a technology leader with over 25 years of experience in video analytics, computer vision, and AI. He's currently leading the emerging AI research and development at Milestone Systems. Previously, Egal served as CTO for BriefCam and other companies, driving innovation in the security and surveillance industry. Russell Biederman is the area sales manager for the Eastern United States. He's a Milestone veteran with over 8 years at the company. Russell started as a channel business manager before moving into leadership at Milestone. Alex Knapik has worked in technology, security, and intelligence for over 20 years. He's passionate about the real-world impact of technology on individuals, communities, and society. Thank you all for joining us for the conversations today.
Hello, Keith. I'm very happy to be here and talk about this exciting technology.
Yeah, thank you, Keith. Really happy to be here too as well. It's really exciting to see how the world is evolving with this video intelligence.
Absolutely. Thanks, Keith, and thanks to everyone. Appreciate your time.
Let's jump into our first topic. Russell, what is video intelligence and why do people care?
So, video intelligence comes from intelligent video analytics, and these use artificial intelligence or AI, which includes machine learning and computer vision to analyze video footage. They extract metadata about objects, activities, events, making videos searchable, actionable, quantifiable, everything that you see within the camera footage. These insights enable features such as like object tracking, anomaly detection, and automated pattern recognition. Tasks that previously required like a lot of human review, but now can be handled by AI-driven systems, tremendously reducing the amount of time spent.
And Alex, how do security professionals begin to shift gears from current technology over to advanced video analytics?
Yeah, I like how Russell put it that the technology is here to just rapidly decrease the amount of time that operators have to take. Right? When we talk about moving from surveillance to intelligence, what we're really talking about is like applying intelligence to the whole system, to the whole environment. In the past, people were the only people that could provide intelligence, right? They were looking at the live video, they were looking through the recorded video, they were making connections with the video itself, right? Now with AI, with analytics, we're shifting who does the observation. And really, to me, that's what analytics is. It's shifting observation onto the system so that people can do what they really need to do, which is deciding and acting, right? So when the system is doing observation, it can be proactive and it can allow you to be proactive. So then you can make decisions and actions because you simply can't look at all that video all the time, but the system can, right? And it's improving a ton there. So analytics really allows you to scale, to get to the evidence, to be able to turn insights into the business impact that you need. analytics is scaling observation is really what it comes down to. And so then what our customers tell us that what they want to focus on is what should they decide on and how should they act on it, right? And that's when you come to us, when you work with us, when you work with our partners, to really figure out, okay, how do we offload that observation in the right way with the right AI system to help you decide and act the way that you need to.
Alex, if you could get us started by telling us how those video analytics work, that might help set a framework for our conversation today.
We'll start first with like kind of pre-trained analytics, like deep learning, computer vision stuff. The things that now in 2025 are very, very accurate, can be very, very fast, right? Essentially, what you're doing here is you're segmenting out a background. You're figuring out what's in the background, what's in the foreground. The system's then identifying, detecting those objects, classifying them, and then putting them into a database for later search. And that's that kind of pre-trained computer vision, deep learning sort of analytics. Big piece here is that you're classifying those different objects, and there's vastly different levels of depth, right? You can go as simple as just identifying people and vehicles to really, really advanced stuff, not just a vehicle, but what color of that vehicle, what type of vehicle, what is the license plate on that vehicle, what is the speed of that vehicle, what's the other actions that it's doing, is it going the wrong way? All those kind of classifications can happen. And that data is tagged and then stored in a database that you can search on, alert on, get insights from. Those are kind of all those basics. Now, when you start to get into the different kind of stuff, when you start to get into the AI world of generative AI, large language models, visual language models, that gets onto another level as well. And that's when you're talking about like zero shot or even few shot learning, where you're not using pre-tagged classifications, where it's a really big advantage when it comes to flexibility there. But we'll show you those things kind of as we go. But this first part, the really highly accurate, highly stuff that's really good at being fast and accurate, is this kind of classification into a database, tagging our different objects and then classifying them.
And Russell, how does the software begin collecting that data from video?
It's very interesting. Collecting data is very much similar to a supply chain. First you're talking about capturing that video, and capturing that video can be a camera that's on a fence looking at your perimeter, or a camera that's inside of your own building or one of your buildings that you have if you have a campus environment. Then after that video is captured, you have to transmit that video to a central system. This can be done either wired, wireless, cellular, all sorts of different ways that method of transportation can occur. As soon as that method of transportation occurs, that data is in process. And these specialized software, using these algorithms, they're using AI to process this footage. And what they do is they analyze this data. The system identifies like these patterns, events such as movement, facial rec, object detection, or even crowd counting. And then after all this is analyzed, all this is gathered, it's about having a proper user interface that allows users to easily be able to view the footage, receive these alerts, to be able to visualize and see these patterns over time. Because that helps them manage their system, manage their environment, and just manage what's around them.
Igal, what does that look like without getting overly technical? What kind of back-end processes are happening?
Yeah, so basically everything starts from the camera, of course, and then the video is from the camera is streamed to the VMS. While it goes to the VMS, the only thing you can say is when it was recorded and where it was recorded, which is very, very limited. The video analytics platform, once the video goes there, either live video directly from the camera or recorded video from the VMS, basically takes and translates all that video into metadata, into objects, as Alex mentioned. So basically, we actually collect all the faces, plate numbers, object classes, what they are wearing, hats, bags, everything. Basically, everything is tagged into a database. And once it's there are plenty of things we can do with that. So first thing is investigate in much more efficient way. Because we can filter the information that we see, and we'll see later how we actually use Synopsys to view that video in a very efficient and a timely manner. And then we can view only what we want. So if we are looking for a person with a blue shirt, we will see only that people with blue shirts or men with blue shirts if we select a specific gender and so on. So that's one thing in order to increase investigation time. The second thing is to improve situational awareness. So we can take all this information from the database and we can implement real-time rules on that data. Those rules can actually trigger the user if a person with a blue shirt is now entering a specific area. So let's take it as a simple example. Let's say there is a situation where there is a suspect with a blue shirt. And we want now, instead of saying on the radio to all our guards, look for that man with a blue shirt, we can basically immediately run that rule into all for all our cameras. And now for all those cameras, we will search for a person with a blue shirt and we'll generate a trigger in real time when any camera sees such a person. The third thing, we can actually use that data in order to aggregate it and to generate business intelligence based on that. So that's basically how we actually take and capture the time. Okay, so basically it's very hard many times, we will see that in one of the examples, to get an insight without aggregating a lot of data that was collected over time. And that aggregation enables us to actually understand some trends and some things that just by looking at video, it's very hard for us to capture that.
Businesses have a lot of different needs. They scale across a wide variety of topics. But in regard to video analytics, the Milestone product portfolio is designed to address those business needs, no matter where the needs occur. So let's look at the portfolio and how that helps with various applications. Let's start first with Alex, and let's talk about Arculys VSAS just a little bit.
Yeah, when we talk about Arculys, we talk about the type of customer that we like to say needs professional results without professional training. That means it's someone who may not have even used the system before or uses it very lightweight. Think about a principal or vice principal of a school or a general manager of an office building or something. They don't maybe need to use the system often, but when they need to use it, they need results. So it's extremely important that we implement analytics and AI to make things easy and simple and effective for those kinds of users. So we like to say it's multimodal AI built for simplicity. The first and foremost thing when we're implementing our use of visual language models, large language models, chatbots, it's how can this be used by a user that maybe hasn't even gotten trained? And so that's the key. What are the essential things that they need to know? And the biggest things that we find are that simplicity and flexibility in the environment.
And the core video management software for Milestone is XProtect. Russell, tell us a little bit about how that integrates analytics for users.
So it's a transitionary environment for a lot of these end users as their needs develop over time. You look at about how these end users, what their needs are going to be 5 years, 10 years into the future, what they're going to be searching for. Everything from, for instance, a student sneaking in after hours, into a K-12 education system, to a casino needing to track people who were coming into their facilities over who might be on lists that they can't gamble. All these different types of analytics for these diverse applications is what our VMS does very, very well in. So it allows us to have conversations with multiple choices for these end users and really have in-depth conversations based off of what is their needs now and what may their needs be in the future and what other end users are also experiencing.
And the advanced video analytics platform for BriefCam is very advanced and takes people into a new level of capabilities that you don't see in the Arculys VSAS or in XProtect VMS with analytics integrations. Gal, tell us a little bit about BriefCam and why people might consider a video analytics platform.
Yeah, so BriefCam is for advanced users, where you actually need a very detailed capabilities and very wide capabilities. So basically, it starts from a very detailed description of your object. BriefCam can detect object attributes such as shirts, long sleeve shirts, short sleeve shirts, and pants, and whether he has a hat or not, or a bag, or a handbag, or a backpack. Of course, all the genders. You can really analyze very complex paths, so we can actually detect cars that are doing a U-turn. So it actually analyzes a very complex path. Of course, speeds and all that. In addition to all that, you have with BriefCam the patented technology of Synopsys, which enables you to actually capture all the information that was actually happening in a very long period, let's say over a day, in just 20 seconds, by showing a very a video clip that shows everything on a very short time frame. So that's one thing. And another very important thing is the fact that it's an open system. So basically you can connect that to any VMS. So it's either for investigation by analyzing recorded video from any VMS, but also for live alerts by connecting directly to the camera. So it's a very flexible platform, enabling, again, investigation, enabling searching people based on appearance similarities of those people, based on facial recognition, whatever is available due to regulations and so on. LPR, you name it. Almost everything that is available today in video analytics is covered by that platform.
And that's worth seeing. We'll check that out in just a few minutes. Let's talk a little bit about how security operators are using these tools in the field. Igal, let's start with object and vehicle recognition.
First of all, it's all about detecting and recognizing what is that object, right? So the typical use cases are faces, like facial recognition, and license plate recognition. Those two are, in some cases, are very sensitive because they are compromising privacy of people. Plate numbers are less sensitive because you can opt out. Basically, you can decide not to use your car in a way, but very hard to opt out of your face, right? So that's why it's more sensitive. We have that as an option in BriefCam, because in case due to different regulations, someone doesn't want to have even the option to use facial recognition, we can actually have that without this feature.
So next, we'll take a look at behavioral analytics. Alex, can you walk us through this topic?
That first step, like Igal talked about, we have the recognition of objects, right? We've detected those objects, whether it's a person, a vehicle, a different kind of object, a face, different kinds of things, and maybe even a deeper classification, not just a person, but a child wearing certain clothes, things. But then when we get to actual behavioral analytics, it's like that next step. What is that object that has been recognized doing, or how is it interacting with its environment? That's what we're talking about when we're going to behavioral analytics. So whether it's line crossing or detecting loitering or counting the amount of people, all these things kind of are coming through. What are those objects actually doing? And lots of times they build on each other, right? Once you've detected that object, you can then detect that that object has crossed a line. And then if you've detected that it crosses a line, you can count how many objects have crossed that line. And so you can do people counting or vehicle counting. And if that a certain object is crossing a line, you can detect if it's crossing it the wrong way. And so then you have wrong way detection. So all these things kind of end up building on each other as we get more and more behavioral analytics. And there's just so many different applications for it in so many different industries. I think even as a lot of these systems have gotten nothing but more and more flexible, more and more accurate, there still has been a long time of people overselling or kind of over promising on some of these behavioral analytics. So I want to ask kind of the rest of you, or Igal, maybe if you've got some insight here, is kind of overselling or over promising on these behavioral and other advanced analytics kind of still happening? Is it still an issue, and kind of how can we help mitigate that?
Yeah, so that's definitely, we see that some behaviors are more, let's say, robust, or let's say reliable, like line crossing. Obviously, it's something relatively more simple, but But many times when we talk about slip and fall, sometimes very hard to I would say to distinguish between a real event and maybe a nuisance alarm, what is usually called, because someone just kind of uh, went down to fix his shoes or some other behaviors. Anomaly detection is another thing that many times oversold, because it's sometimes it's even, I would say, two people that will look at the same behavior. One will say it's an anomaly, the other will say it's not an anomaly, because it's kind of very subjective thing. So very hard to really measure accuracy on those things, and that's, I think, many times what we see when we say people kind of overselling that.
Some of these things we've had around for quite a long time, long before generative AI became a buzzword in business and a buzzword in technology. But there are some things that are a little bit more on the cutting edge, a little bit more on what we could potentially see working really well in the future. Gal, take us through some of these advanced video analytics.
Yeah, so when we talk about advanced video analytics, we usually talk about things that are until recently were not even available, or we couldn't even dream of doing them. So with deep learning and VLMs, now we can actually look at gestures or face gestures and try to understand even people's emotions. Again, it's not, I would say, robust as some other more traditional video analytics capabilities, but we can actually do that today when looking at multi-camera object tracking. It's already possible for many years doing that based on facial recognition, but actually looking at just by the way people are wear their clothes and the way they're walking and all that to track them between cameras is relatively more complicated, and that's something that with in recent years become actually robust and available, and that's actually a Briefcam has today in a beta stage such a system that can actually track people between cameras. Weapon detection is another thing that relatively more complex, because sometimes weapon can be concealed, or it's very hard to see that weapon is someone is actually holding a weapon. So it's more, I would say, kind of more advanced. We can also look at some other things that are, I would say, more futuristic, like gait analysis. So there are a few, mainly in the academia, researchers that says that claims that a gait is something very unique, so it can actually detect or recognize someone by his gait. So far, it's mainly when you have a very good capture or very high resolution and very high frame rate video of that person walking on a trail miles. But it's but maybe in the future we'll have a more robust options for gait analysis, aggressions, and some or even talking about prediction of what people will do in this day, like how they will act. That's again mainly in the academia, not really something I would say robust as an industrial solution.
Not ready for prime time, but coming soon to a video surveillance system near you, right?
Yeah, probably. But when this technology moves so fast, we might see that sooner than later.
I think something here that comes into play is to your point, Keith, and Igal, as you're saying, is there's a difference between what's possible and what's realistic and what's actually valuable, right? And you just really have to understand what your needs are before you want to implement a solution. We too often we've seen customers that want to just implement the newest technology that they've seen in a demo, but it doesn't really bring results to their actual business, right? And that's such a huge thing, is just to be aware of what are you actually trying to accomplish, and make sure that realistically in your real environment, the system can actually do what you want it to.
That's a great point.
Yeah, that's a great point, and actually a good example is a weapon detection. So, for example, and I think the way to look at it is: are we looking for something for offline or for investigation or in real time? When we look for something that will generate a real time event, it needs to be very reliable because no one will accept a system that generates too many false positives. Think about it. If you have a false positive on a gun, someone can either be arrested, or what are you going to do? You're going to lock all the gates of the school just because of any false positive on a weapon. So you need to have someone to validate that event in real time. It means that you need to have an operating center to get those alerts. So it's much more than just having an algorithm running. It's about having the whole operation around it. When you're doing something for investigation, you can actually handle more false detections because once you search for something, and it saves you so much time to detect what you wanted, you are much more tolerant to get some false detections. So I think it's very much also around the use case.
Let's take a closer look at this time compression. This falls in line with a tool that we've had for a really long time, but doesn't really come across in a lot of other video analytics systems. Yigal, can you tell us about video synopsis and what time compression means?
Yeah, so time compression in Synopsys is basically taking all your object that you filtered in your search and show them in a compressed way. So you put all of them together on the same scene. That enables you to see many different trends and detect exactly the event that you're searching for without looking through the whole video, let's say a full day of video. Now, Synopsys also enables you to basically look at different and other layers of information. So, for example, you can see what are the trends of paths that people are taking, and based on that, you can actually detect, like in this example, we see that in one side of the street, people are actually paying on the drugs. And on the other side of the street, they are collecting those drugs. You can see that now we see only the dwelling time, but at the next step, when you look at different paths, you see the red path. And that means that a lot of people are taking that path. And that's very weird. Why in that street people are actually moving from that side to another exactly there? Apparently, what happened here in this street is that people, as I mentioned, were paying on the drugs on one side and collecting them on the other. You can actually detect that only by looking at those trends. That's what I was mentioning earlier, how we aggregate data over time to understand some trends.
The tools that are deployed vary widely. It can vary significantly depending on the complexity of each business and what they need. Yigal, can you tell us a little bit more about some of the different deployment scenarios?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what we usually see is four different types of deployments. The first one is the edge analytics. I think modern cameras today enable video analytics in the camera. They can run even deep learning models in the camera. However, those are usually basic analytics compared to what you can do on the server side. And that's usually because those cameras are limited in power. They are limited because of heat dissipation. You cannot put more than few watts within a camera. It's just a matter of physics. And although chipsets become smaller and smaller, still, when you put analytics on a GPU, on a server, it will be able to do much more. And that's the reason. And because of that, it's actually prone to a lot of false alarms, what we call false alarm fatigue. Another typical deployment is what we call end-to-end. Those are a combination of edge devices and VMS combined together as an end-to-end solution. Some of the analytics is done on the camera. Some of the analytics is done on the server. Usually it's coming from the same vendor, and that has some advantages. However, it's limited in terms of capabilities. So you are basically locked in a closed garden. If you want to have capability that is not part of your the system, then it's very hard to add outside features of outside analytics into your system. And sometimes it's also limited in its scalability. Another type of analytics that we usually call it a point product. A point product is a video analytics that is very focused on solving a very specific and concrete problem. For example, an LPR system or a container recognition system. We see that for example, using by parking, public parking garages, integrated into a billing system, or on a port recognition system for OCR recognition on containers. Those things, those kind of systems are very reliable, but they're very much focused on solving a very specific thing, which is great if that's the only thing you need to solve. But if your needs are more are wider and you don't know upfront what exact capability you will need in your video analytics system, I think the best solution is to have a platform. A platform enables you actually to kind of enjoy all worlds. It's an open system that can actually integrate or add different analytics capabilities, so you can choose best of breed from different vendors, and that's what Milestone VM Open VMS system enables. But you can also basically enjoy the capabilities of server-based analytics that actually have a very wide range of algorithms, from LPR to face recognition to people detection to people tracking and all those things. So it's kind of the other way. That's what we call a platform. It's actually a very wide set of capabilities, while still keeping you open to adding more and more capabilities as you go.
Russell, how does Milestone's portfolio of products address some of these deployment requirements?
So it's really helpful to split up into 3 different categories, in my opinion. We have essential, core, and advanced. And when we talk about essential, you're talking about when you're looking for simplicity, easy deployment, everyday needs. You're talking about analytics such as motion detection, object tracking, and these are really ideal for companies with very straightforward video intelligence needs. So simple motion monitoring, object detection, event rules, and alarms looking up to get started like really fast. These essential video analytics are very apparent inside of our Arclys VSAS solution. Inside the core capabilities, this is when you're getting to be more sophisticated. You're using like a lot of our built-in features of our on-premise VMS and a lot of the support for all these third-party integrations. You're building a working environment based off of your needs, not just for now, but also 5-10 years into the future and as you evolve. And so these features can include, like, for instance, facial recognition, people counting, license plate recognition. It can be integrated into the access control systems for automated door unlocking. It can get very sophisticated very, very quickly. And that is where our XProtect VMS and our integrations come into play. It's very suited for businesses with more specific and granular video analytics requirements. Then we get into our advanced intelligence video analytics. So this is like when you're getting to our most advanced options, like our brief cam video synopsis. You're looking at like appearance similarity in these really mission critical environments where you're trying to respond as fast as you can. It requires a lot of planning in terms of what you want to do searching for it, but that video synopsis can really help detail and break down and allows you to analyze video data unlike any other. And that comes into our BriefCam advanced video analytics. So that's the ideal fit for industries like law enforcement, critical infrastructure like power plants, and even retail, where every camera feed, just like how Alex was saying beforehand, allows you to detail, for instance, different ins and outs of your stores. So that is where you're talking about helping organizations make these advanced, very proactive, and data-driven decisions.
So let's shift gears a bit. and look at how businesses can see the value in choosing video analytics. Russell, how can users expect to see a return on their investment when they purchased advanced video analytics?
In terms of like specific ROI metrics that a lot of organizations use to determine whether or not analytics can be successful for them, let's look at time and time savings. So, most notably, a lot of our end users report a significant percentage reduction in investigative time. What previously took like days of manual video review can now be accomplished in hours or even minutes. An example would be a casino that I actually worked with back in the day. They switched over to our core analytics with our VMS from what they were previously using, and what took them a 2-hour investigation was now done typically within 5 to 10 minutes. So this dramatic time savings, like it directly coincides and translates to labor cost reduction. And these faster incident resolutions can really help and significantly improve, for instance, insurance payouts as well as police response times. So these organizations, they will also experience you know, a increase in usually customer satisfaction. And the example is a hospital was, trying to find a missing person. And all they knew was where this person's room was. They didn't know how they left. They were able to use facial recognition and the brief cam analytics to figure out where this person was wandering outside of the facility and being able to help that person back in. You're taking what can be a response time to a potentially very life-threatening moment for that person and being able to bring them back into safety. So this proactive approach really reduces like the frequency and the severity of these, security events at times, and it helps also reduce these false alarms. So when we have, like, for instance, a trackable improvement in guard efficiency or in police efficiency, we have examples like in police departments where they're able to take what used to be coverage of a single detective across one location into 6 to 10 locations with the same amount of detective hours as what was previously required for like a single stakeout. Operational efficiency from these regards and time savings is the ROI that a lot of these organizations are striving for, especially as they're being reduced in the amount of staffing or they're trying to just improve the use of the space that they have. And it has actually proved very fruitful in a lot of investigations where they were able to get to evidence before the evidence was actually destroyed. And it actually has helped get people convicted of very, very serious crimes and bring a lot of closure to people.
So, Alex, Milestone has a history of responsibility in technology. It's a very important initiative for us. Can you show us what that looks like for video analytics?
Yeah, and there's a lot of aspects to using and adopting analytics responsibly. I think a lot of people think mostly about the sort of compliance and the security of their data, right? The cybersecurity, the security of security, and being compliant. And we certainly care about those things. We when it comes to compliance, we very much support and keep in mind GDPR. We have FIPS 140-2 compliance for people in the U.S. And on the cybersecurity side, we have many things. The Hercules team and Project SOC 2 Type 2 compliant. We had compliance at Milestone with ISO 27001, like all these different kind of things that we could go through. And then those are really important. But when it comes to analytics, something that really popped out at me, there's a recent survey, I think it was a Gallup poll with Bentley University, someone that said that only 31% of Americans said that they trust businesses to use AI responsibly. Only 31% of Americans. We've got a long way to go. And at Milestone, we realize how important that is, especially when it's something as sensitive as video and video surveillance. So it needs more than just compliance and regulation and adhering, even though we do all those things. So one of the things that's really important to us is, as you mentioned, Keith, a big initiative to us is the responsible use of technology. We were one of the first companies to support the G7 Code of Conduct for AI. We did that, gosh, it's almost been 2 years ago in January 2024. And there's just a lot of things when it comes to being transparent about how we're using AI, how we're actually building it, how we're actually using it ourselves, being accountable to humans, and again, communicating all those things. It's a centerpiece of what we do. We want to source AI training data ethically, whether that's anonymized real world data or it's synthetic data. We think it's really, really important. We're ethically getting that information. We're very transparent about how we use it, how we use customers' data, and how we protect that data. All of these things and lots more. We could talk about it all day. But this is a really important part of the future. Customers are telling us that their legal departments, their customers, their boards are all asking them about the responsible use and what their plans are for responsible use of AI throughout their organization. And we want to be one of the leaders of that when it's something as sensitive as video.
And we go beyond that. We don't just look at how we build our video surveillance tools and our video analytics tools. We also look at how people use those tools. And we try to take that from a company standpoint, we try to take that to the next level and really look ahead at what our customers are doing and if they're violating any ethical considerations, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's very important. Ultimately, we build tools for our customers to use, but it's really important for us that we can do as much as we can to make sure that our products are being used ethically. And that's a big thing that our partners tell us. Our partners, this is a very complex world that our reseller partners and integrators are telling us they need help navigating. And we want to be on the forefront there as a partner to help them understand these new things and to understand how best to advise their customers.
Russell, let's take a look at how the rubber meets the road for some of our business partners. Many of our customers are asking questions like, are video analytics future proof? How user friendly are they? What other departments are going to benefit? Can you take a look at some of that for us?
Yeah, so one of the great things about analytics is that it can spread across departments. You have it where, for instance, on cruise ships, where they're looking at initially just for incidents over man overboard, incidents over people who are lost or there's fighting, and then suddenly the stores want to look at where are people traveling within their stores on the cruise ship the most. You got the buffet lines looking at which of the part of their buffet lines are actually being uh, visited the most, so that way they can reduce spoiled food. And that type of spread about these analytics really occurs once one department sees how those are, and it just brings up the imagination over what could I be using the same video for? And it becomes into, when you're looking at it, about how user friendly it can be and how future proof you can make that. When you're focusing on using it in a very simple way and a very expansive way, we find more people will use these analytics and go deeper into other analytics as well.
And people are probably wondering, how do I know which one to go with? And how do I ask the right questions? What's the best way for people to get connected with this, Russell?
Yeah, the best way is actually just to talk to us. Talk to us about what type of pains that you're experiencing, what type of needs that you are, or even just ask us, hey, what are other people in my industry, solving right now? What are they also experiencing right now? Let us be a voice for you in the industry, not just for you, but also for other people in your industry, and help you along that journey.
We've covered a lot of ground during this webinar today. That wraps up our panel portion. At this point, we're going to open it up for questions from our attendees. If you have a question, please make sure you type it into the question and answer section in the webinar app there. There's several questions that we're going to be covering. We want to make sure that we're helping you with that. We have some folks on here to help us respond to questions. We probably won't have time to get to all these today because we've covered a lot of ground in a very short amount of time. So we will be posting a frequently asked questions article that you'll get after this webinar. We'll provide a copy of this webinar to you in an on-demand recording that you can access. We really want to do our best to help you understand this topic and really move forward. And then you're welcome to reach out and book a demo with us so that we can handle specific questions you may have and show you precisely what might work out well for you. So let's kick off our questions. Quick thanks to everybody behind the scenes who helped answer questions during the webinar content portion. We've got an army of folks that are helping to get answers out to folks. That's new for us, and hope the experience with the webinar is going better for you. Big thanks also to our panelists for helping to provide great context around a lot of information. We do have several questions that have come in. Russell, the first question is for you. How are intelligent video analytics being used to enhance environmental monitoring and workplace safety? What are some real-world examples of these applications in action?
We had actually one case of a casino that had a series of battery banks that was providing backup for it. However, they had reports of the people from the office that were right next to them that were getting extremely lightheaded. They actually put some sensors into that closet that was holding this large amount of batteries, and it turns out that there was a lot of different chemicals that was actually being released at the time that was drifting actually into the office nearby. So it was really interesting how the people who were complaining all the headaches actually had a really good cause for what was causing them.
Yeah. And just quickly, let's talk about some of those items that are typical. For example, audio sensors are a part of this equation. Also, environmental sensors. Could you go into that just a little bit for us?
Yeah. So let's take it from like a higher education point of view. We have several of our higher education facilities who have these blue towers that are spread throughout the campuses. So that way, if a student is in trouble, they run to the blue towers and hits the blue towers and continue running and hitting them in line. Meanwhile, inside the command center in their SOC, they have it where it will bring up a PTZ camera and pan tilt zoom it to that actual blue tower. But let's say that blue tower is 50 or 100 feet away, and instead of having a blue tower, you also coincide it with a sound sensor that is picking up when people are yelling for help or people that are screaming, where you have that type of scenario going on. Those extra few seconds that are able to, dispatch officers to that scene can potentially save a lot of lives in cases like that.
Alex, let's start with you here on this question. What should we expect in the near future when it comes to video analytics? We briefly discussed generative AI and video language models. How are some of these figuring into the next generation of intelligent video analytics?
Yeah, I mean the absolutely the use of generative AI is huge, right? And it's opening up opportunities to search for things, to get alerts on things, to understand our environment like better than we ever have before, right? The fundamental difference of not having to only work on pre-classified objects is a game changer, especially for our customers that don't necessarily know what they need, right? When they first buy a system, right? So generative AI systems are coming. We've got some amazing things coming from Arcules that are super exciting to show. We're excited to be able to show those soon when it comes from things like being able to do searches on potentially free text that you can define different objects that aren't, kind of pre-coded into a system or pre-coded by a camera. The ability to just ask questions of your environment and ask questions about your system to come in and say, things like, what kind of alarms am I getting most commonly? What can I do about a different trend that's occurring, and just be able to ask those questions straight up from your product. Those are really exciting things that are coming. If you've come to our different conventions, you see demonstrations and examples of that. And we always want to learn more, but so many of those things are on the verge, and we're really excited to be able to show those soon.
Sure. Gal, let me pitch this one your way. How well does facial recognition work?
So when people ask how well it works, it's very much depends on the scenario, use case, environment, and so on. And what we do, we make sure that whatever we release works very good in that specific use case. So if we are doing, for example, an investigation where we are more tolerant to get more results, even they are false, because we are now looking for something specific, then we enable more results to be seen by the user, while comparing to real time, where we are more strict about the alerts that we are generating, because people are very sensitive to false alerts. The way we measure, we use different use cases and scenarios. What we call that end to end. Okay, so for example, when you let's take the super simple example of a crosswire, for example. This situation is very much depends on what you are trying to detect. So let's say you want a person with a blue shirt crosses a specific line. So it's a combination of many things: how well you're classifying people, how well you can identify colors, how can we track that person well so you don't lose it while it crosses that line, and so on. We are measuring both end-to-end scenarios and measuring our performance there on our benchmark of data, and we're optimizing the solution. However, we cannot cover all the different scenarios and all the different things that can happen, or the way people can use this technology in the world. So it's not so relevant to talk about specific percentages, because if it's very dark, it's one thing; it's very bright, it's another thing. If the objects are large, it's one thing; if the objects are very small, it's another thing. So I think in that case, which I think it's a very known challenge, how to measure video analytics capabilities. The best, I would say, is basically to trust the brand, because if so many people are using it, probably it works really well, because otherwise people would not be using it. That's one of the largest, I would say, values that Masdar has through Briefcam. It's already tested and proved itself by thousands of customers.
And Gal, there's one quick add-on that I want to tack on here. Some facial recognition databases, license plate recognition databases, are international or maybe state specific. They're provided from some sort of service capability. Now, that's not necessarily what Briefcam connects to. Is that right? We use more of a local database that each user can implement. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we are not connecting to any national or external databases, either for faces or for plates. We are just selling the technology to get images and extract the numbers from those images, or extract face, let's call them feature or signatures from images, so we can compare those signatures between cameras. So, for example, you can look at, let's say you have a video where you see someone and you want to find him in other cameras. You can just click on that person and find that person in other cameras. The system itself doesn't know who it is. It doesn't connect to any databases. So it's an anonymous, for the system, it's an anonymous person, that the only thing that the system can tell you is that that person in that image looks very similar to the other person in the other image. So they're probably the same person. That's it.
Very good. And we're very careful about giving customers the opportunity to opt out of those features if it's something that's not recommended in their area or not legal in their area. Correct?
Absolutely. We are very much committed to our responsible technology strategy and beliefs, and we are using facial recognition in the most careful way in order not to infringe any privacies of people.
Very good. Russell, good question that came in from one of our fantastic partners. Do you think that behavior analytics will evolve more within the camera firmware or the BMS or third-party apps like Breakin?
Yeah, so I think Agal actually mentioned this previously in one of the last slides, is that the power behind a server, CPU, and GPU is just what is really, really needed in order to process these analytics as they are right now. Obviously, 10 years in the future, that may change as hardware evolves and advances. But basic behavior analytics can be done on cameras as it stands right now, such as slip and fall, but they're not really doing it through machine learning or AI. They're actually doing it with, like, for instance, in that case, aspect ratio changes. So something that needs to be done with machine learning and AI in that type of matter needs the processing power of a server behind it. So you're going to see that more within the VMS, more within these third-party applications, more within BriefCam.
Alex, here's a pretty good question that came from one of our attendees. They just attended an emergency management and security conference. Folks there at the conference were giving a negative perception of AI tools used in surveillance systems. What can you share with us about that that might ease some of the AI-related anxiety for users around some of these tools?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of anxieties. We saw that stat, like the surveys about being nervous about the use of AI and technology. I think certainly some of the pieces about being really upfront about how we're using our technology. I think Igal made a excellent point or discussion about what systems are we using for this. You know, there's a huge difference about what you're using facial recognition for example. Are you using it with an outside database to identify people based on faces that you've brought in or something, right? That's not something that we're doing in our products. Or if a database does get integrated from a different system, that's very clearly outlined, or if you're intentionally doing an integration or something like that. So being super clear about what the system's use case for is extremely important, right? You need to know, like, no, if a system might be using facial recognition, it's using it to do a similarity search. Okay, this face is similar to the other faces, so we're help to identify that person across multiple fields of view, multiple cameras, right? As an example. So I think that sort of transparency, understanding very clearly what your use case is, and then how the technology applies to that, those are really important things. Another big piece that really comes in to kind of allay these concerns is to talk about how your data is protected, right? We're not using a customer's video surveillance data, which can be very, very sensitive, right? We're not using that to train data sets for other customers. You know, that's something that we're never going to do unless there's explicit permission from certain customers, right? Which certainly could be in certain places, but we're not going to be taking someone's video that they don't know, and we're using it to train someone else's systems. So I think understanding how we're using data, how we're making sure that individual customers' data is protected, and then just what is the real application for their use case, all those things become really critical to try to help customers in the market sort of understand how AI can be used safely.
Great. We've run out of time for questions, as I knew we would. We have way more questions than we can get to during the live broadcast. However, we have a team of folks that are actively working to get questions answered behind the scenes. Thank you to those folks. Thank you, Alex, Russell, and Agal for helping us out today with this very valuable topic. We appreciate you being here.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
And very much. If you would like to learn more, maybe we didn't answer your question, or you've got specific questions about your deployment and your project, please leave us your contact information. We'll get in touch with you and set up some time that we can discuss your specific question more closely. Thank you for joining us today. Thanks for spending your time with us, and hope everybody has a fantastic day.